Hey, everybody, welcome back to I Know a Guy. I'm Anthony, and this is the podcast where connections thrive. Each episode, we spotlight inspiring entrepreneurs, professionals, and individuals doing amazing things. Together, we'll grow your circle, spark collaboration, and discover new opportunities. Today, we're meeting Faris Aranki, the CEO of Shingeto Consulting, a firm renowned for blending strategies with emotional intelligence. Faris shares his journey from high school teacher to CEO, offering insights into skills that drive success and how he helps businesses and individuals improve their effectiveness. How are you doing today, Faris?
I'm really good, Anthony, and hello to you and all your listeners, viewers, just anybody out there.
Yeah, I was excited to have you on. You have a pretty interesting story, teacher to CEO. I have a couple questions specifically about that, but to start off, where are you located? Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from London, UK. So I'm here in the centre of London, actually, joining you today. So I love this transatlantic podcast that we're pulling together.
Awesome. Have you been there forever? Are you newer to the area? Are you forever?
No, I've been where I am for the last 5 years. I born and raised in the UK in London. I've spent about 12 years living in other countries, Anthony. That was a lot of my school teacher days, but also some of my business life. And but you know what? It's like having a giant bungee cord on my back. I can run and run from London, but at some point it always pulls me back because it's such a great city. So if you've not visited it, come and visit. I feel like I work for the tourist board, but it is a great city and a great hub.
Well, that's my next question is, for those of us that haven't visited or for those that were to show up, let's say you have a friend coming into town. Where are you taking
Yeah.
them? What are you showing them? Where are you going to eat?
Okay, great question. So the thing about having friends come visit, it's like having one of these conversations, actually, Anthony. Right? For the friend, it's their first time and everything is new. For you, right? I'm 45. I've shown a lot of people London a lot of times, right? So it's got to be entertaining for both of you. But it's the same like having a conversation. It might be the first time for that person to have the conversation, but for you, you've probably had it hundreds of times. So what am I doing? I'm probably doing something that will tick both those boxes. I am either showing them stuff but putting a different spin on it. So let's go see all the highlights: the Tower of London, the London Eye, the Houses of Parliament, Big Ben, some of the great museums. There are fantastic restaurants, but I've probably taken them some new places that I haven't seen, and that might come in the restaurants, that might come in the different locations. In fact, there's a fantastic tour agency here in the UK that I found a few years ago called the Bullshit Tour of London, right? Right. And I think they now operate in other cities around the world. But basically, what they do is they take you to all the major sites, but they make everything up. And no two tours are the same, right? So the guy who takes you around is an improv comedian. So although you're seeing the famous sites, every story will be completely different and made up on the spot. And it's so much fun for people who've maybe seen that site before, done it. So if you come to London, you and I will probably go on a bullshit tour of London and have a great time.
I really like that idea. Not that I've ever been to London, but you drive by Big Ben or something. It's like, yeah, I know what that is. I've seen that literally everywhere forever.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
There you go.
that would be fun. And plus, it makes it a little bit more interesting for you too. So, awesome. Well, what can you tell us about what you're doing?
So what I do today is a combination of all the things I've done, and I've had a few career transitions. But what I do today, effectively, I run a small business, and our job is to go into companies and get teams working more effectively around their strategy, right? To be more successful. Now, what does that mean, right? Too many strategies are built with just IQ, like here's what we need to do, but they don't take into account how well is the team working, how well is the business, do they get on with each other, do they understand the strategy, do they have enough bandwidth to do the strategy? So we go in and fix all those things, right? We get people working better together. It always has an impact, right? We do that we have a patented methodology how we do it, but fundamentally it is working across three components, which I'll bring to life in a bit. But that's what we do, and we do it either through getting ourselves in the middle of the teams and getting more out of people, or we train leaders to do what we do. So I am going, my business day is going and working with big global corporates, working with people day in, day out to get them working better together. It's super fun. It's super impactful. And I've been doing that the last 5 years, and touch wood, we've been super successful at it.
Awesome. Well, how did you get started? Because you started as a teacher, high school
I
teacher. You did a
did.
lot of traveling for that too, and then landing where you are now. How did all that play out?
Yeah, straight out of university, I was a trained mathematician and economist, so I ended up teaching high school math and economics. And for me, it was a great vehicle to. One of the reasons I got it was to live and see the world. So I spent a couple of years in Latin America teaching at schools there. I then spent a couple of years in South Asia teaching at schools there, then a couple of years in the Middle East, and then taught back in the UK. And actually, it was the school in the UK that was the final nail in the coffin for me. It was a really rough school. The kids would swear at you every day. They'd come with knives, and you were dealing with a lot of social issues that you had to treat before you even could teach a kid something new, because they turned up to school without any food. They turned up to school without the right clothing, and that's actually where when I trace back some of the genesis of what I do today, right? You can't give someone a great strategy or teach them something new if they've got all this other chaos in their life. They just don't have the bandwidth. So you've got to help them, sort of neutralize that as much as possible. So that was the first career I had. Loved it. Took me around the world, back to the UK. But once I decided I'd had enough, it was time to transition. And actually, making that transition wasn't easy. It took me a whole year to transition into the corporate world, but I did end up at an oil and gas company. So I learned all about the oil and gas market. I actually ended up in their strategy team because I was very analytical, and I realized I love solving complex problems. Now, I should say, in between that year when I had a transition, I worked for the police for a while here in the UK. I tried my hand as a journalist for a while, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. So I always tell people, try new careers, try things. And actually, although I didn't end up doing those things, I learned a lot from that, and I incorporate that. Anyway, back to the oil and gas firm. I got headhunted because I was in their strategy team. I got headhunted into strategy consulting. People will have heard of the companies like McKinsey. Those are the kind of people I worked for. And I went from analyst, the most junior level, to partner in 12 years. And I saw a gap in the market 5 years ago where I said, look, I can do what I do, but bring that edge of thinking about the emotional intelligence side. So it was 5 years ago I set up my own business. So that's how, a long story short, I went from being a high school teacher teaching math and economics to being a CEO of a firm that now has 6 employees, and we work with some of the biggest multinationals around the world.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that advice you have too, is try different things. Even if you don't end up doing them, you're going to learn more than you did going in. So that's fantastic advice, especially for a lot of us that maybe are looking to become entrepreneurs and we don't know exactly what area to do it. So you're looking for mentorship, you're looking for experience. You can kind of try something on for a bit and go, nope, I can't see myself doing this forever. And then and then it narrows down that list. You're resolving that. So you don't have that what if I would have done this. It's like, no, I tried it. I really, really didn't like it. So I'm not going to keep doing it. So that's awesome. So
Yeah.
how do you think your time as a teacher has helped you with dealing with others as far as like the emotional intelligence side of it?
Yeah.
Because I imagine, especially if you're, coming from a rough school where you really needed to handle those issues before you could even start teaching. I imagine there's a lot of crossover between those two.
A lot of crossover, right? And a lot of, my learnings and that came particularly in my first year. Yeah, so that tough school was very informative, right? And the tough school taught me you've got to put yourself in the shoes of the other person, right? But really, that was a message reinforced from my first school, where I remember my first 6 months trying to teach. I tried to teach how I'd been taught. Right now, I'd been to a good school where the teachers, all the kids were well behaved, all the teachers were highly, motivated and educated, and so they just, it would flow effortlessly. But when I tried to recreate that, the kids wouldn't pay attention, right? And I was struggling to get through to them. So what did I do in response? I just talked louder and sort of got more angry with them. And then one day, my boss was observing, and after the end of the lesson, he said to me, "What are you doing?" I said, what are you talking about? He said, "What are you doing right now? Look at yourself. You're just shouting at the kids. You're not getting through." He said, "You are the adult in the room. They are the child, right? But you're expecting them to change, whereas you should be the one who changes." And that was like eye-opening. That was the first introduction to emotional intelligence. I always say to leaders, to be really emotionally intelligent, change, read the room and flex. That is one of the key skills. And what I was doing was missing both those points. I wasn't, aware that the kids were getting frustrated as much as I was, but more importantly, I wasn't changing. And he taught me the ability to change. And so in that environment, it meant try teaching in a different way, right? Tomorrow, walk in, instead of just talking at them, play a game with them. The next day, do smaller groups. Always be just flexing and trying to get through to their level. And really, that is the backbone of what we do today, is reading the room and flexing to get the most out of a team.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice as well. Like you said, being the adult, yeah, they do need the change, they do need to get better, but they're not going to do it just by yelling at them. That's what everybody else has been doing, and it doesn't work. So why perpetuate that? So
Yeah,
make tweaks and kind of guide them into that's teaching, and then that's
that's
leader
teaching. Yeah.
that's leadership in general. So I really like that correlation that you've been able to find. Um, what's your favorite thing about what you're doing now?
Do you know what it is, that moment of impact when you work with a team and something clicks, right? You might fix a bad behavior in the team, like they're not giving each other feedback, they're not being honest with each other, and suddenly you can crack that. And it was very much like that moment when I was a school teacher, when you'd help a child who previously really struggled with a topic. Now, math, a lot of kids, 50% of kids hate math. They'd tell you on day one, I can't get it, I'm not going to enjoy it. But by that moment when you got through to them and they got something for the first time, there'd be this aha moment, right? Where their life is going to be different from that point on. It's the same feeling I get with teams when you fix a behavior or something that has been holding them back. And you, as the facilitator or the independent person, goes, everything is going to be different now. You don't appreciate it, but I can feel it in the room. And that for me is what drives me to do what I do, because we get those moments with every team, and it's such a powerful moment.
So as far as emotional intelligence and like specifically talking about leaders, you kind of
Yeah.
have people go back and forth as far as, oh, good leaders are born, good leaders are made. Kind of where do you fall on that? And is there any truth to either side, or can you kind of adapt it?
There's an element of truth. What I say is everyone can be taught to be a leader. Some of us just start naturally further down the racetrack than others, right? So, but you can learn those skills, right? Now, when we go into companies, we talk about three dynamics that your team needs, right? That your leadership needs. You need IQ, right? Smart thinking, a great idea. Now, that doesn't all have to just sit on the leader, right? A great leader knows how to get the best IQ out of his team or her team, right? But if you're not good at that, we can help with that area. We can teach you how to be more creative, more strategic, better thinker, right? The next thing you need is EQ, this emotional intelligence. You need to be able to get on with everyone. You need to be able to flex and motivate people. Again, if you don't do that naturally, we can help you with that. We've got lots of techniques to teach you. And the third pillar that often a lot of people don't see is what we call FQ, right? Focus quotient. You need to have the ability to be focused, right? Anticipate risks that are coming up, right? And be well organized. Again, those are all teachable things, but it's that combination of those three things that brings success. But do you know what? Most leaders have two out of those three, right? And I always say it's like a tripod. They have a wobbly leg. So where we come in, we identify the wobbly leg and we help balance it. Um, and it can all be taught.
So a lot of entrepreneurs starting out, they don't have teams under them. Like you said, you
Yeah,
had a team of six, and leadership's clearly important there.
yeah,
But it's also important for us that are out there as solopreneurs or individuals,
it
because
is.
you're still going to have those same skills, even if you're not running your own team. Those skills translate over to sales, translate over to just
They do. Yeah,
networking and creating partnerships. So, do you
yeah.
have any good examples of somebody that maybe wasn't thinking they needed leadership skills, but they were like in desperate need of them?
Oh yeah, loads of it. I'm plugged into a lot of solopreneurs, communities, and small business owners. And as you say, it's that you are leading yourself in the early days. You are leading clients or prospective people to buy you. And a lot of people don't see that. And what I find is the single biggest challenge is you get people who are very IQ oriented, like they're really good at what they do. And it doesn't matter what industry, they're the best lawyer, right? They're the best. They know all about AI. They know all about cooking, right? But what they don't have is that EQ or that FQ, right? The leadership in those areas. They don't know how to communicate to people to get them excited about the fact that they're a great chef, or that they know so much about AI, or they know so much about the law. They don't have the focus to do business development every day and the discipline, right? So they don't appreciate that they need those leadership skills, not just to be technically expert, right? But to be a well-rounded leader. And that the people who realize that and address that sooner rather than later are the ones that go on to run a successful small business or solo career. And the ones who don't, unsurprisingly, tend to go back to a corporate job, or just are still plodding along years later.
Absolutely. Being able to communicate is going to help you regardless of where you're at. So understanding, having that emotional intelligence, being able to talk to somebody and not just be like,
Yeah.
I'm just really good at plumbing, right? That's awesome. That's a good start. But you need to be really good at talking to people that you're helping to. So super important.
Yeah.
I always recommend people read books like How to Win Friends and Influence People
Yeah.
for that exact reason.
Dale Carnegie. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you a funny story. Like a friend of mine who used to be a management consultant, he retrained as a carpenter, and he will freely admit he's not the best carpenter out there, right? Because he learned late in life, but it was his passion. But do you know what? He's got a 4 year waiting list of people willing to wait 4 years for him to come around and build something because he took the skills of a management consultant around communication. Yeah. And he just over communicates to all his potential clients and they love him. They say, well, look, because you're so good at that, I'm willing to wait 4 years. And that is the true power of having those other elements. You can be as good as you want, but if you cannot get people excited, treat them with respect, tell them stories, they'll just go and find any carpenter.
Absolutely. There's a million different people out there doing what you're doing. You need to,
Yeah.
have that little bit extra, communicate better. People like you. They're going to want to do business with you. So, what are some common mistakes that maybe you're seeing entrepreneurs make early in their career or something maybe that you were doing early in your career that you would advise others to kind of skip or avoid?
I think the number one mistake is how you articulate your business. So it goes back to that communication. Something I made a mistake, certainly for the first year, is I would turn up to meetings and I'd just come across as too desperate. I'd talk about all the things that I did. Oh, I run this workshop. I do this. I do that. Oh, A, it was too much. It was overload. B, the other person doesn't care what you do. They care about how you can help them. All right. You will hear this time and time again. And it wasn't until I sat back and reflected. I'd read it in so many books, but I was like, I've got to stop talking so much and I've got to stop saying I. Right. So I just flipped the whole conversations around. I'd meet them for a coffee and I'd say, what's going on in your world? And I went from doing 80% of the talking to doing 80% of the listening. And do you know what? That's where the work began to flow.
Going back to that book, be interested, not interested, not interesting, right?
Yeah.
Listen to people, let them talk. The best way to tell people what you do is to ask them what they do and then not interrupt them. Let them go. They're going to come back afterwards and say, hey, I really appreciate that. Sorry I talked so long. Can you tell me about you? And then they're going to actually listen because they feel like they accomplished what they're after. You can ask poignant questions. You can, steer what you do toward to kind of meet with them. So super, super important. And a lot of us do. We start off in the entrepreneur world. I started off in sales. I had commission breath really bad because everything was now me this and once you get over that you step back and you can see it in others and you're like, hey, let me give you a piece of advice, don't do this ever again. Right?
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. um
Yeah. Yeah. I was
no
going to
so
say two. I was going to say two other things. So listeners, the first one resonate with you. The second one, common mistake. Are you not doing business development frequently enough? Right. I see that is a mistake. I saw so many people doing. They'd only do it when they finished their last project, right? Or when there was a cliff edge of work running out. I learned from an old boss, do it every day. Literally, do some sort of business development every day as a small. And then the third mistake I see people doing is trying to do too much alone. And I don't mean hire people. You need to be part of communities. Right? I made that mistake myself. I thought I'm strong, I can do all this, but you underestimate how much easier it is when you have other people in your camp who can support you emotionally and cheer you and commiserate with you. So I'd say those are the three things I see people either slow to or make mistakes around.
yeah, absolutely, that is both of those exactly, and I'll come back to that third one here in a minute. But
Yeah.
first, what does an average client look like for you? What are some pain points that somebody might be going through that if they're dealing with it, you're the person that they need to talk to?
Yeah. So, like I said, we very much our sweet spot is dysfunctional teams or teams that aren't working as well as they could be together. So the pain points are they're not having honest conversations, right? They're not chatting to people across departments. Even when they do sit and meet, they don't have productive meetings, right? People walk out of there with different viewpoints. Um, these are the kind of clients we can help a lot. But to be honest, we say to clients, we will be able to get more out of your team than you can. We guarantee it. Otherwise, don't pay us. Because we know that everyone is not their 100% sharpest, most effective every day. They might be only operating on 80%, but that lack of 20% really impacts business. It's amazing how many people don't have the conversation they should do, or walk out of a meeting not really understanding what was discussed or agreed. So those are kind of things. And what does it equate to? Most 2/3 of our work is with big corporates. We work with Amazon, Heineken, Anglo American, big sort of product companies. We work with oil and gas firms around the world, but we also work with startups and charities. We like the variation because all of them have different challenges in their teams. So why not help in all those areas? And also it makes it more fun. So those are the kind of people that come our way and we make big impacts with.
Yeah, I mean, the importance of communication and emotional intelligence is going to cross all different industries. So size doesn't matter as far as, if there's people involved, you're probably going to have some.
If there's people involved, yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, kind of your third point was kind of growing your circle and having that group of
Yeah.
people around you. What does like an average power partner look like for you? Somebody that might be in a different industry that you guys might be able to work back and forth together with, or you find a lot of synergies in relation to each other's businesses.
Yeah, there's a couple, right? Because so we do partnerships because we're at the top of the stream, so to speak, doing strategy work, right? We help senior boards, senior teams work out, hey, this is what we need to do in the next 3 years. We're all aligned. They then need to do that work. So actually, a lot of our power partnerships are with the people who will do that work, right? And it might be, hey, over the next 3 years, we need to change all the contracts in this business. So therefore, a power partner will be a legal firm that we bring in. Or it might be, we need to implement this new IT system. So we'll bring in, IT teams or IT guys to take over at that point. So that's one big power play. The other power play is often when you work with teams, there are particular individuals who need more help. And that's when we refer them to coaches. So a lot of power plays with really good coaches because it's not our business model. And it's, we're not trained coaches per se, although my team can do it, but it's not our thing. So we always say, look, our commitment is we will get you a great coach to work with you for the next 6 months, a year to work on those individual things that you could be improving. So those are the kind of the power partners that we work well with.
Okay. Yeah, and that's super important to have because you can't really do everything. If you try to do everything, you're not going to do anything really well. So
Yeah.
having the people that, you're able to work with and kind of refer back and forth with, like, what, by the sounds of it, you're probably not, I'm not going to be able to help you as well as somebody else, but let me make that introduction. So
Yeah.
super, super important. A lot of us make that realization maybe a year or two into our business where it's like, oh, before I'll do it all. Yeah, absolutely. And now I'm like, no, I need my client to have the best experience possible. So we're gonna introduce you. So yeah, awesome. And I know these next questions we could probably go down the rabbit hole on each of them for
Yes.
but just for those that are just dipping their toes in, how does emotional intelligence help businesses achieve greater strategic success?
So, like we said, if you just lead with IQ, right, you just have a really good strategy, and people aren't bought into it. All you've got at the end of the day is a piece of paper, right? It comes down to the people. It comes down to that motivation and engagement. So, having the EQ is going back like I was in the classroom, being able to step back, go, what's happening right here? Okay, these kids are not getting it. I'm getting frustrated. What do I need to change, right, to get through this blockade? So that's what really good EQ in a business allows you to do.
Okay. And we talked about some of the similarities between, being a teacher and working as a CEO. But what would you say the biggest lesson you learned was from transitioning from being a teacher to a CEO?
It's about labels and stereotypes. Right? I will never forget when I applied for 30 jobs with my CV said I was a school teacher. I applied for 30 corporate jobs. All 30 rejected me. And I got one letter back from a head of HR who said, I don't know why you applied for my job. You're a teacher. You should stay being a teacher. Right. But so for the next 30 jobs, I changed the title on my CV, on my resume, and it said expert communicator able to simplify the most complex topics and think on their feet for 8 hours a day. Do you know how many of the 30 jobs I next applied for accepted me? 28 of them. Right. So don't get stuck by labels and stereotypes. Change your own label if you're facing a block, and it may just make the path a bit easier.
Yeah, I like a lot of the labels that you'll see out there where you're not 100% sure what it is, so it kind of invites follow-up saying, what is that? And then you have the chance to communicate. And if you're, even remotely good at communicating at that point, you're in further than you'd be if you just had a standard this. So being engaging, absolutely. What are some of the more common barriers that you see, other businesses, not new, not old, just in general, that
Yeah.
you see businesses face that you're able to help them overcome?
They're not leading by fact is one, right? If we look in the IQ, a common challenge is they build stuff, they do stuff on a hunch, not because they actually know there's a demand there or people are interested or right. You've got to lead by fact. Now, I'm not saying don't take chances and risks, but don't bet everything on black based on a hunch. Right? Try and quickly prove or disprove your hunches and then go all in is number one. And hand in hand with that is people don't have enough ideas. Right? When we work in strategy, we would say you need 100 ideas to pick the best one, 100 strategies, paths to get to the top. Most companies, most people come up with two or three. And do you know what? Those two or three are things they've done in the past. They feel comfortable. Does not mean they are the best strategy. So those are common things in the IQ bucket, in the EQ bucket, not taking others on the journey, not flexing enough. And then in the FQ, the focus quotient bucket, doing too much simultaneously. Right? It never stops to amaze me how many businesses out there are trying to do 100 strategic projects at the same time. Now, none of us would do that in our personal lives. So why do you think your company could do that? So just prioritize, rationalize, you'll go further.
Yeah, I really like all that. Is there anything that I missed or failed to ask that you wanted to add?
Oh, 100 things, Anthony, but that's why, I can come back or I can carry on the conversation with anyone who found this interesting because, you and I could talk forever.
No, absolutely. And for those that have those questions that would like to go down those rabbit holes, where can they find you? What's the best way they get a hold of you?
There are two great places to find me. One, come and visit our company website, which is www.shingeto.com, and we'll put that in the show notes. Shingeto, if in case you're wondering, is the Japanese word for a sharpening stone, because that's the equivalent that we do for human beings. Instead of sharpening knives, we sharpen humans. And the other place to find me is LinkedIn. There's only one Faris Aranki. I'm on LinkedIn every day. I'll share little tips around the three pillars I talked about. I reply to every message I receive. So drop me a line and we'll carry on the conversation.
Perfect. If anybody would like to get a hold of Ferris, absolutely do it. You need to develop yourself. You need to develop your business, like you said, every day, right? You can be better. You can be sharpened. You can, find areas that, maybe he wouldn't be the best to help you, but he probably knows somebody because, like we alluded to earlier, we all have our networks. We all work with people that are expert. So absolutely have that conversation. You're going to learn more after. You're going to know more after than you did going in. So absolutely reach out to him. If you're a little bit more shy and you prefer an introduction, ask me. I'm more than happy to make that three-way introduction for you. Otherwise, if anybody out there like to get in touch with me, you can find me at ikag.me. You can find more episodes, subscribe to the newsletter, and connect with our growing community. If you or someone you know would like to be interviewed, you can also apply to be a guest on the website. But Ferris, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on and giving us all a high level overview. I know there's so much more to go into. So in the future, if there's more, we can absolutely go back in it. Or otherwise, I absolutely recommend, like I said before, everybody get a hold of them. But let's have an awesome day. Let's all get out there and grow our circle. All right.
All right. Thank you very much, Anthony.
My pleasure.